Hello, I'm Orla Allen, medium and author. If you haven't already, please go back and see my 3 previous videos. I'm doing a brief run through of the tarot cards for a brief kind of description of each. If you're interested in doing my tarot course, please contact the page, and I will be publishing a book on tarot maybe the middle of next year. I haven't quite pinned down a date for that yet. So really quickly, here we have the Ace of Swords. And the Ace of Swords, like all the other aces, it's a new beginning. Now, swords represent your problems and issues. So this is a new problem or issue that's raising its face. It's something which you perhaps haven't dealt with before, but it's something brand new that you're having to deal with. So you kind of have to look at what the other cards are around about it to know what it's talking about or where it's going with it, where the problem's related to. Then we have the Two of Swords, and the Two of Swords is kind of talking about where we're moving forward a little bit with this problem or issue. It's not quite so new anymore. It's been hanging around for a little bit, but we're still not sure what to do with it. Now, if you notice, she's got 2 very big swords in her hands and she's blindfolded. The blindfold tends to talk about the things that we don't see. So there's other elements that are going on here. It's not just as clear-cut as we think it is. So, for example, if we think there's problems at our work, perhaps it's going to lead to more than we think it's going to be. So perhaps we just think it's making our life uncomfortable. So perhaps there's changes within the company, and we just think that it's going to, it's just, for whatever reason that it's making our lives not as easy as they have been, or somebody's just kind of blowing hot steam because they want things to change a little bit, when in actual fact maybe there's real significant reasons for it. Perhaps the company's in trouble, perhaps there's administration going on behind the scenes, perhaps it may even be layoffs. So the 2 has this element of risk with it and an element of the unseen. So there's more going on with this card than you think. The 3 of Swords, again, like the 3-legged table, if you leave it in the corner, it's going to be perfectly fine. If you lean on the part of the table that doesn't have a leg, it's going to tipple over for you. And what it means with this card is we almost have to stop and not take action. We have to wait and see what's going to happen. We have to hold our cards close to our chest. In this card, you can see that there's a heart with 3 swords in it. So it very much talks about where we want to be or where we want to go to. Big changes happening. What our heart wants and what is actually going to happen are completely different things. Perhaps there's big change coming, and it's not going to be the way it's always going to be. Perhaps somebody's walking away, maybe a person's leaving the job, or maybe a person's leaving a relationship, or maybe a friend's moving away. There's very much this element of a loss of control with this card, but also I'm going back to the blindfold in the previous card where we don't have all the information yet. We need to wait and see what's going to happen. Then we have the 4 of Swords, and this very much has a more restful, more calm kind of energy to it. 4s always represent where there's more stability. So going back to the 3-legged table, this table has 4 legs, so it'll sit there perfectly fine. You can lean on pretty much any side of it, and it's not going to tipple over unless you do something crazy. Anyway, so this is bringing with it more stability. It's more restful. The problems and issues are still there, but the situation's more stable. So we have more information now. We know what's going to happen, or we have a good idea of what's going to happen. And there's not this unseen element to it. It's all kind of laid out there for you. Then we've got the 5 of Swords, and the 5 is talking about where you're at a crossroads and you've got a decision you need to make. So this problem has happened, you're dealing with it, you've got all the information now and you need to decide where you're going to move on. And I always feel with this card that there's a heart element in it where we don't want to move forward, we don't want the change, we want things to stay that they are, because life's easier if we know what's going to happen. But the unknown kind of brings a little bit of fear with it, because we don't know where we're going to end up. We don't know, is it going to work, is it not going to work? When in actual fact, change is usually a really, really good thing for us. So we should embrace change more, because the chances of it being really bad are so minimal. This card is very much, you're at a crossroads, you have a decision you need to make, and if you don't make that decision, the decision will be made for you. 6 of Swords, again, this is about your foundation. It's about your family. It's about creating the future that you want. And there's an element of this card with where, because it's your problems and issues, it's kind of getting in the way of your dream or getting in the way of your goal for your family life. But I always feel with the swords cards that they're very negative initially, because they are a problem or issue, but it's usually force and change. And when change is forced onto you, it can feel a little bit like growing pains. It can feel really uncomfortable, but it's usually for the best. So there's always this element with these cards of where the change has been forced on you, or the problem and issue has been forced on you, but it's been forced on you for the better, and you're going to come out the other side of it much more positive than you were beforehand. There's always this element of, in 6 months or a year's time, you're going to look back and go, oh, well, I'm glad that happened. It was really hard to deal with at the time, and I wouldn't want to do it again, but it's led me to here, and this is a much better place than where I was before. So these cards usually have a stale or stagnant energy that you're trying to get rid of, and the swords come forward to make that happen for you. The Seven of Swords, again, we're manifesting our future. But with this card, you'll notice he's carrying 5 swords. So again, we've got this element of you have a decision you need to make, and he's looking back at the 2 previous swords. Now, anytime you're looking back, there's regret, there's kind of thinking about the past, but what you need to do with this card is look to the future. So you need to think about how you're thinking about things. That sounds kind of weird. But yeah, you need to focus positively. You need to keep your thoughts positive. You need to focus on what it is you want, not what you've had. You need to focus on what it is you're trying to bring into your life rather than what you're trying to get rid of. And if he's clearly walking away from those 2 swords, there's an element in it that he needs to leave them behind. He needs to forget they ever existed and not keep looking back to them, or he won't be able to appreciate what's in front of him because he'll be still looking back and won't see what's in front of him. Then we have the 8 of Swords, again, fated situation. Now, she's blindfolded in this, so there's an awful lot in this card which talks about the unknown or the unseen, but she's also got her hands tied and kind of a little bit of her legs tied as well. So there's restrictions in this card. There's things which she doesn't have an awful lot of control over, and she doesn't have an awful lot of knowledge about. And it's kind of being forced on her. Now, when it's a sword card, because it's the problems and issues, then it does really, really feel uncomfortable, I want to say. It does really feel like doom and gloom, like, oh no, where are we going to go with this? What's going to happen? This is really bad. But I very much feel with this card that it's going to be beautiful change. It's almost like the greater the risk, the better the outcome. So I feel like with this card that although the initial shock of what's going to happen is going to really rock the person that's involved, it is going to be a huge blessing on the person's life. So it's that duality of kind of like the yin and the yang. With the 8, where her hands are tied, she's blindfolded. It's that kind of loss of control or non-existent control over the situation. But when she comes out the other side, she's going to realise that it's what she really wanted in the first place. Then we have the 9 of Swords. Again, 9s are closing doors and stuff. So we're leaving the problems and issues behind. With this card, there is the element of trying to overcome the fact that we're leaving the problems and issues behind. Now, sometimes this is people, and perhaps that's why she's got her face in her hands as she sits in the bed there. She doesn't want to leave the people behind, but it's very much we need to leave whatever it is that we're leaving behind with this card, because it's the only way that we can move out of the problems and issues. Then we have the 10 of Swords, and the 10 of Swords talks about a new phase within the problems and issues. So I kind of feel like with this card that we haven't made the changes that we should have, we haven't made the decisions that we should have. So it's kind of coming back at us a second time to force us, to really, really force us to say, right, okay, look, enough's enough. You need to make these changes now. You need to move forward. And you'll see that he's lying on the ground and he's looking at the mountains, and the mountains are where you're trying to get to. It's where you're trying to go to. It's what you still have to climb. And there's also the element of water between him and the mountains, and water represents emotions. So it's very emotional, this card, and there's an awful lot of stuff that he needs to deal with. The Page of Swords again comes forward with this new energy, this vibrancy. The rocks almost, or the mountains always look tiny, the trees look tiny below him, so he's more than capable of it. He's got that youthful motivation. The Knight again, the Knight's charging in, he's charging forward. The horse is even running. You can see the horse's hair blowing in the wind. So there's this element of charging forward to make the change And finally, we've got the king and the queen. And you'll notice that the queen's looking off to the side where the king's looking straight on. So the king's got control of the problems and issues, and the queen's maybe not looking at the right direction. She's looking in her heart. So that's an element.